Hey gang, back again. It's Uncle Todd and Sonny. And decided for the rest of the year I was going to do monthly themes. And since this is April and we have April Fools, that's already passed, I thought I'd do horror films that featured a comedy team in it. Sorry, that means all these for this month will be in black and white. Anyways, it's time to put on our Indiana Jones hats and head off to the South Seas as we look at a film by that great comedy team, one of the big comedy teams of the 50s. No, not Martin and Lewis, but their knockoff attempt at a comedy team, Mitchell and Petrillo. Basically, Sammy Petrillo was a comedian. He came from a comedian family, basically, and he spookily resembled Jerry Lewis physically. So much so that during one appearance on TV, Jerry Lewis actually had him portray his son in a bit. And you have to understand, Martin and Lewis were huge in the 50s. They made a bunch of films. Everybody loved them. And with Petrillo looking uncannily like Jerry Lewis, he began to kind of parody Lewis in his act. And that's where we come up with Duke Mitchell, a pretty standard nightclub singer. So they would eventually team up to kind of cash in on the whole Martin Lewis thing. And their act originally on the stage, which unfortunately I don't think there's any film of, but they would have a thing where Mitchell would impersonate other singers. Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Tony Bennett, that kind of thing. And Petrillo would imitate other comedians and cartoon characters. And then, for the big finale, they would announce they were going to do an imitation of Martin and Lewis, in which Petrillo would portray Martin and Mitchell would portray Lewis. Kind of like that one radio appearance where Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce kind of parodied themselves by playing each other's character in a Sherlock Holmes sketch. Anyway, the way this film came about was that the producer had seen an interview with Bela Lugosi where he was talking about how he wanted to do more comedies. And the producer immediately came up with this idea. And he cast Lugosi, who could never turn down a role because he was always in need of money. And for the comedians, he cast Mitchell and Petrillo to ape Martin and Lewis. And the title of the film, Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla. Fun little fact. It's not really known if this film, which got a much wider release than Mitchell and Petrillo were getting on the nightclub circuit, brought them to the attention of Jerry Lewis, who threatened to sue them for infringement on his act. Or if their act broke up because as the Martin and Lewis act went on, Martin was getting tired of the act, the bit. He had been a pretty well-known singer before he teamed up with Lewis, but nothing. He was not a star. And this had made him a star, but he was always overshadowed by Lewis, who people were comparing to Chaplin. As if that doesn't give your ego a boost. And they were downplaying Martin's input into the act. So, as he got more and more upset, and he and Lewis fought, the act broke up. Now, this was a long time coming, because at the end of one of their films in Ohio, Martin films played all the time. He was from Steubenville, so yeah, you're going to see a lot of Dean Martin films. At the end of one of their films, they assured everyone that they weren't breaking up. They were too good of friends of each other. And then they made one more film and broke up. But Mitchell and Petrillo, they went on to lesser careers than Martin and Lewis. Mitchell went back to singing, and probably his biggest achievement during this time was being the singing voice of Fred Flintstone on some episodes of the Flintstones. Then in the 70s, he wrote and produced and directed his own film, Massacre Mafia Style, in which he played a hitman. And the uncompleted, this was in, I think, shortly before his death, Gone with the Pope, which he never finished, but the company that then got the footage edited together an essential film and released it. As for Petrillo, he went back to doing stand-up. That was his first passion. And he did make a couple of nudie films that he wrote and produced. Shangri-La in the 60s, and Keyholes Are for Peeping in the 70s. But his biggest impact on popular culture is actually from the comedy nightclub he opened in Pittsburgh. And he mentored young comics. Most notably, he was an early mentor of Richard Pryor and Dennis Miller when they were on the stand-up circuit. So, there you go. But the film, Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla, also known as The Boys from Brooklyn, opens with a narrator talking about this jungle island that we're on. So get your Indiana Jones hat out. And we first introduced to our two stars passed out in some ripped up tuxedos. Who indeed? Mitchell and Petrillo. The natives, who turn out to be friendly, pick them up, take them back to the village, where the chief's daughter has them shaved, given haircuts, and changed into more tropical attire, and then try to figure out how to wake them up. Wow, he does look like Lewis back then. Well, they explain, neither of them is Mervyn. They're a nightclub act, Mitchell and Petrillo, and they were on their way to Guam to do a show for the boys when Sammy had to go to the little boy's room, and he wasn't sure where it was, and Mitchell was going along with him to make sure he got there okay, and opened up the door, and they fell out of the plane. They'd been in the water for a while before they washed up on the shore. Well, this is great news, because now this gives the tribe the excuse to have a little luau. Yeah, that's the level of humor we're going to get here. Anyways, The chief's daughter, Nona, who we've met, speaks impeccable English. Turns out she had been sent to the States to get educated because the chief, her father, felt it was important for the eventual ruler of the tribe to be educated. Anyway, she, of course, Nona, is getting kind of friendly with Duke, which kind of ticks off Sammy because, well, he doesn't have anyone, but Nona has a sister. And I bet you can tell what the joke is coming up. Another knee slapper there. Oh, fat phobia was so funny in the 1950s. Anyway, to get away from the overly affectionate native, Sammy jumps up and decides to do part of his nightclub act. Nothing says funny, as in, you get it? You get it? Actually, his act goes over pretty well once Nona starts translating. With Sammy finally being a hit, it's up to Duke to show what he can do, and he gets the band to start hitting their bongos, and an apparent horn section that's hiding in the trees kicks in, and he gives a rather rousing rendition of that old standard "Deed I Do." You know, do I love you? Do I? Deed I do. I'm more familiar with the Lena Horne version myself, but that's neither here nor there. So after that, Sammy is chased into the jungle by the sister, and they have some funny antics. And Duke and Nona go for a walk in the moonlight, where he learns that she is a assistant to a scientist on the other side of the island who lives in a castle. He's doing research on evolution. Maybe he can help them get to Guam. Well, that's a great idea. So the next day, they go to the castle, where Sammy inadvertently insults Dr. Zabor, but Bela, he's okay with it, and even lets them have some of his clothes. Now, wait a minute. I'll buy the suit Sammy's wearing, but you cannot convince me that that outfit Duke put on is in any way some clothes that Bela Lugosi had in the closet. Anyway, before that, we learned that Bela's he's a little sweet on Nona there. Once again, just like in The Gorilla, when I reviewed that one last year, you know you're in trouble with a comedy when Lugosi's reactions to your comedian is funnier than anything the comedian's doing. And he does a lot in this thing, all of it annoying more than anything else. But they do get to meet Ramona, Zabor's test subject. He's basically trying to work on a formula that will make the chimpanzee evolve into a gorilla, thus proving his supposition about evolution and Darwin's theory of every cell contains the DNA ingredients of evolution in it, or something like that. They also meet Peppy, the local law enforcement, who was stopping by to get some acid for his batteries for his radio. And he tells him that he can only contact the neighboring islands, but he might be able to get in contact with a ship that could then pick them up. Bela likes that because he wants them out of the way. And to show how gracious a host he is, he invites them to stay at his castle. Such a nice guy. Wanting to keep an eye on that Duke. Stealing his girl. Anyway, that night, Ramona, who is like Saloma, who is the sister of Nona. Yeah, these names will get complicated. Ramona the chimp has taken a shining to Sammy, and she's easily able to get out of her cage. No. Anyway, he takes Ramona back to her cage, but she won't let him go until he sings her a lullaby. And well, then we cut to Duke returning from walking Nona back to the village. The next evening, to show their appreciation to Dr. Zabor for putting the two Americans up in his castle, the natives have another dinner celebration. During the celebration, Duke and Ramona decide to go for another moonlight walk, and Zabor has his assistant Chula keep an eye on him. Well, Chula reports back to Zabor that not only did Nona become engaged to Duke, he sang her the ballad too soon. Well, that is just too much for Bela, and he whips up a new formula that he tests on Ramona. Well, now he can devolve as well as evolve animals. Now he just needs a human test subject to work on. And he has just the man in mind. So the next morning, he unfortunately finds out that the potion wasn't strong enough. Ramona's back to being a chimp. So, while he works on a stronger mixture, he sends Chula out to waylay Duke, who's on his way to the village to visit Nona. Getting Sammy out of the way by sending him to the village. He works his magic on Duke. It's a pretty good lap dissolve. Well, Duke is very upset about this, but since he can't talk now that he's evolved into a gorilla, he can just shake the bars in frustration. Meanwhile, Sammy, who's been on the way to the village, has run into Nona, and they make a sad discovery. Working on the assumption he lost it, Nona tells Sammy, don't let him know. I want him to come to me to tell me he lost it. Then I'll show him I have it. Those kind of shenanigans. But when they get to the village, Duke's not there. So they have Saloma and the rest of the tribes go out to the jungle and look for him. And Sammy and Nona return to the castle to see if Duke's there. He isn't. But Zabor shows off that he has evolved Ramona into a gorilla. Well, Nona's thrilled for him, but she and Zabor go back to the village together because he is concerned about Duke's missing. Meanwhile, Sammy is in the lab with Duke, and he finds Ramona and Duke's clothes in a closet. Well, Duke finally convinces Sammy of who he is by doing the one thing a real gorilla couldn't do. Well, with Duke's bona fides confirmed, Sammy lets him out, where he immediately punches out Chula, and then they go hide upstairs. Chula recovers, thinking they've left, and runs to the village to let Zabor know. Meanwhile, all of Duke's grunting and anger, he pounding his chest and stuff, has attracted a real gorilla to the house. And we get another in that comedy classic bits of mistaken identity. Naturally, they have a bit of a comedic chase with the real gorilla, only to run into a returning Dr. Zabor, who's got a shotgun. Or, no, he gets a shotgun, and he's ready to take out Duke. So they get chased back to the village, where now they have to convince Nona that Duke is Duke, not Ramona, who's gone berserk, as Zabor told everyone. But alas, Dr. Zabor shows up right then. And then, most astoundingly, Sammy becomes a hero. A touching scene. And if it had ended there, this might be a better remembered film for the shock twist at the end. Also, supposedly, Jerry Lewis was seeing this film in a theater, and when Petrillo got shot and fell over, he was heard to yell out, "Thank God!" But I don't know if that's real or not. But it makes a good story. As for shock ending, we get this. And that's the twist. It was all a dream. Oh, and as for all those people in the dream, we get that Wizard of Oz kind of ending on it. Aw, he actually likes her now. And so it ends with them doing their act on stage. Oh, what the heck. Let's have one more of Sammy's jokes. And so we fade out on Duke doing another rendition of Deed I Do. Mostly because this is a low budget film and they could probably only afford to license 2 songs. This is not a very good film. It's not very funny. Lugosi, of course, he's always fun to watch, but Mitchell and Petrillo, even though they are a comedy team, they don't have that chemistry that you get from like a comedy team that's been doing their act a long time. They'd only been doing it, I believe, a short time by this point, and they were only hired to be Martin and Lewis knockoffs, and just doesn't really work. I mean, Mitchell's a good singer, and Petrillo, he does have his moments. He does a really good impression of Lugosi. But most of his shtick is more like this. Yeah, he's just aping Jerry Lewis. And if you want to see that, watch Jerry Lewis. But as I said, he had a bigger effect after this than he did during the heyday of imitating Martin and Lewis. There's not really a whole lot to say about this flick. It's cheap. It's not funny. The leads aren't that engaging. In fact, the only reason I think it's even watched today is for Lugosi, because Lugosi had screen presence. Well, disappointment, but hey, any Lugosi is a good Lugosi. Even this one. Although Martin Landau watched this movie when he was researching his performance of Bela Lugosi in the Tim Burton film Ed Wood, and said that this film is so bad it makes the Ed Wood films look like Gone with the Wind. Now that is a burn. Well, please hit like, share, and subscribe, and stay after the credits for my favorite scene, and I'll see you next time.